All right, welcome. Today we're going to dig into a really counterintuitive idea. We're going to break down why the business model that seems the absolute hardest for a beginner is actually the safest path to success. And this is all based on one founder's story of how he accidentally stumbled into his first million.
So let's start with this quote because it's pretty revealing. The founder says his first million was basically a huge stroke of luck. And why? Because he accidentally chose a high margin, low volume business. Looking back, he's convinced that single choice wasn't just a factor. It was probably the only reason he made it. So this brings every new entrepreneur, maybe you, to a really critical crossroads. Right from day one, you have to pick a path, and that choice is going to have huge consequences for your entire journey. On one side, you've got the low margin game. This is all about high volume, being super price sensitive, and honestly, it's incredibly complex from an operations standpoint. Then on the other side, you have the high margin path. Here, you're dealing with low volume, you're sensitive to value, not price, and your main focus is just on sales. But hang on a second. This is the big question, isn't it? The one everyone asks. As a total beginner, you've got no brand, no reputation, absolutely nothing. So how in the world can you possibly convince someone to pay you a high price? It feels impossible. Well, to answer that, let's first talk about the low margin trap, because what looks like the easier path is actually a nightmare, especially when you're in that crucial 0 to 1 phase of just trying to get something off the ground. Think about it. When you're just starting, your number one asset is focus. You have to be obsessed with one thing. But the low margin model completely shatters that. All of a sudden, you're forced to worry about supply chains and cost control and logistics, all before you've even found a single paying customer. I mean, just look at this gauntlet you have to run. First, you have to figure out a supply chain. Then you have to control every single penny. Then you have to somehow acquire a massive amount of traffic. And only after all that time and all that risk do you finally get to see if people even want what you're selling. It's brutal. And hey, this isn't just theory. This is the painful stuff that happens in the real world every day. You go on a site like 1688 to source a product, and you find out, get this, that your purchase price is actually higher than your competitor's selling price. Or your profits are so razor thin that just having to repackage a dirty item and pay for shipping twice, poof, your entire margin is gone. Okay, so if that's the trap, what's the way out? Well, this is where the high margin model comes in and feels like a superpower. It's not just about making more money on each sale. It's about giving you the flexibility to solve all those problems we just talked about. It all comes down to this key concept called fault tolerance. It's basically your business's ability to take a punch. It's the room you have to absorb mistakes, to handle unexpected costs. All the things that are guaranteed to happen when you're starting out. High margins give you a huge cushion for error. And this quote just nails it. With high margins, a supplier issue isn't some business-ending crisis. It's just a negotiation about whether you're going to make more profit or less profit. For a low-margin business, that same problem is about making a profit versus making absolutely nothing. Let's make this super concrete. Imagine you're selling a bracelet for 1,000 RMB. You start with a really healthy 80% profit margin. That means your cost is only 200 RMB. You've got a massive 800 RMB buffer to play with. And then, of course, disaster strikes. Your supplier calls and says, sorry, can't get it for 200 anymore. For a low-margin business, this is often the moment everything falls apart. But for you, in your high-margin business, it's not a crisis, it's just an expense. You can throw money at the problem. You tell the supplier, fine, I'll pay you 400 instead of 200. Sure, your margin drops, but it only drops to 60%. That is still an incredible profit. The business just keeps humming along. That is fault tolerance in action. This superpower also fixes one of the biggest killers of new businesses, cash flow. I mean, when your margins are this good, you only need to sell, 3 to 5 items to completely pay for your entire first batch of inventory. In fact, you can even pull off this awesome little hack. If you don't want to risk buying a bunch of inventory up front, you can just have your supplier express ship you one item at a time. You repackage it, express ship it to your customer, and the whole thing costs you maybe 46 RMB. On a 1,000 RMB sale, that's nothing. You just solved inventory, capital, and logistics in one go. So what's the bigger picture here? All of this, the fault tolerance, the cash flow solutions, it all buys you the single most valuable thing you have as a founder: focus.
By using money to solve all these operational headaches, you are free to pour all your energy into the one thing that actually matters.
And what is that one thing? It's solving the traffic problem. Getting from 0 to 1 is all about one job and one job only, figuring out how to get customers in the door. Everything else is just a distraction. And just look at the difference in scale here. To make the exact same amount of profit, the high-margin bracelet business needs just 10 sales a day. The low-margin gadget business, it needs to find 4,000 customers, not a month, a day.
So you have to ask yourself, honestly, as a beginner, just figuring this all out, which of these two goals seems even remotely possible? Finding 10 people who want your product or finding 4,000?
And really, this all boils down to one final crucial lesson from this whole story. You have to choose to play a game you can actually win. I love this little anecdote about Sam's Club. Ever notice they sell nuts in square boxes, not round jars? The reason is simple. Square boxes leave zero wasted space on a shipping pallet. They are literally squeezing their profits out of these tiny, microscopic operational wins multiplied by a global scale. That's their game. You can't compete with that, and you shouldn't even try.
Now, look, this isn't me saying that the low-margin model is bad. It's an incredible model for giants like Sam's Club, for companies that have scale and have perfected their operations. It is just not the right game for someone who's on step 1, trying to get from 0 to 1.
So the real question to leave you with is this. At the very start of your journey, when the odds are already stacked against you, are you going to choose a path that gives you room to make mistakes? Or are you choosing one that demands you be perfect from the very first day?